Hey, my name is Dean Lamb. Welcome back to the channel. Today I have a very cool project I'm going to be working on with a guy named Nick Hill. Nick Hill is a YouTuber, musician, and tone master, I guess you could say. He runs a YouTube channel. He's over 11,000 subscribers, so there's some very nerdy subscribers. He usually goes into depth about building tones and songwriting and gear reviews and drum stuff and all that. He's also in a band called Detracortina. I think I pronounced it Detracortina, right? So today I want to talk to him about taking me, a dumb guy, and using the Line 6 Helix floorboard, which I have right here on my floor, to build a rhythm tone from scratch. We'll see how well I do. Please welcome Nick. Nick, do you have a lot of faith in me?
Yes, because I feel like that's the thing I should say.
Okay, full disclosure. If you are a fan of the channel, I have a website called deanlamb.com. I can't believe the domain is available. If you go there, you can find Helix tones, and there's exactly the tones that I use for all my live streaming and recording at home and all that kind of stuff. Nick built all those. He built all of them. Very lucky to have somebody like him. So are you very like Helix-centric? Is that kind of Helix-centric, dude?
Yeah, Helix. My world revolves around Helix. I do have kids, but they don't get much of my attention because...
Well, you're one child Line 6, and then your other child Pod.
Before I had a Helix, I had a POD HD 500X, and that was like my first journey into the whole digital thing because I've been poor most of my life because I had those said kids, right?
What we're working on today is the Line 6 Helix floorboard, which was sent to me by Line 6, and I was very, very excited to try it out.
Must be nice.
That's what we're going to be doing today. Now, I have a window open with the Line 6 HX Edit, and I'm going to start a new thing. Are they called patches or scenes or snapshots? What are they?
Yeah, I bounce between preset and patch.
Let's call it preset. So I have nothing in this preset. Now, a while ago, Nick, somebody told me to think about this like you are building a real amp in the real world.
Yes.
Because I feel like a lot of the times you get option paralysis and you think, wow, there's like EQ and dynamics and all sorts of different compressors and distortion pedals and amps and 2 amps or 1 versus 1 amp or multiple cabs. From my experience, and I'm not great at this stuff, I'm okay to build it as if you were building your own rig. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. When I first got this thing, I read the manual, which I know is something that nobody does. And I just nerded out on this thing for 6 months straight. Exactly what you were talking about so many options, you just get overwhelmed and you're like trying to use all this new stuff. And then you like play through a patch and it sounds like shit, right?
Like shit.
Exactly. You dial stuff back. I started with the things that I was familiar with. By that, because I don't have a ton of experience with like real amps and real cabs, what I do is refer to albums or artists or musicians or guitar players like yourself. Like, what are they playing through? Cabs. Speakers in those cabs, microphones, et cetera, right? So then I just started building stuff that way. And then it led to better and better results, right?
Okay, so you go online or something and you watch Gear Rundown.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. All the time. When I started my channel, at least really putting effort into it, I would make tones for like other bands. Here's a Pantera tone or here's a Ghost tone, something like that. So I would just scour the internet for what they were using, maybe live or in the studio, and then make my best judgment because obviously Line 6 doesn't have absolutely everything in there. So you just kind of like make compromises where you need to, but the impulse response wormhole that you could get sucked into when it comes to these things is real. I know several people who had one of these, got sucked into that impulse wormhole and just felt like it was too much or it doesn't sound right, whatever, and they've sold it. And then a year later, they're like, wow, yours sounds good. I'm like, yeah, you just got to play with it.
Okay, so I have an 8-string guitar here. I have a Kiesel. This is my Artist Series, the Dean Lamb Artist Series guitar.
Flex.
I love this guitar. It's very light. It sounds really good. And I'm using also my own custom set of strings, Horizon Devices strings. It's a 10 to 46 with a 59.5 and a 74.5. A little bit thicker on the low gauge. I'm also using a large Tortex 0.88. It's the big green guy. Big green man. Why this is important is because I found that in the studio doing rhythm stuff, big, thinner pick is the way to go. You might be slower, but you get more of that sort of scrapiness, and that's what we're going for today. We want to find a cool rhythm tone. I'm not expecting album quality tone today. We're probably only going to spend 20, 25 minutes just seeing what we can do. We'll see how far we can get. And then other than that, my signal chain is just my guitar, Kiesel lithium pickups, this pick, and just a regular cable into my Helix. Nothing else. Now that we know my entire signal path, what do you suggest first?
So first of all, something that I'm sure you've heard, like stock cabs suck, right? I'm sure that's popped up. It's not the case. What did you guys use in the studio for the album?
Not the most recent album, the one before, we used a 5153 and a PRS Archon blended. It might have been the actual amps, or it might have been a profile. I don't remember. As for cabs, I don't know.
Perfect. Off to a good start.
Probably using a Mesa 412 oversized, I would assume, but I don't know.
Oh, so we can start with that. What I would recommend is starting with a cab block so that when you strum your guitar, you don't just hear a raw amp, right?
Okay.
We can start with a cab block. And what I would say, if you want a little more flexibility in sculpting the tone, I'm going to shameless plug myself. I have a video about sculpting the tone with cabs and the microphones inside the cab blocks. So if you want a little more flexibility, start with a dual cab block. So if you go up to where it says single right above your list of cabs, you can click that and it says dual. So basically what this is one block with 2 cabs. And why I suggest doing that is not so much for blending 2 different cabs, but you can blend 2 different microphones. Oh. It's a very, very common practice to do. Okay. So I think it's going to be that XXL V30.
Great.
That 4x12.
Okay.
So if that's what you want to start with, we can start with that. And don't forget, there's an additional cab that you need to switch over to. So
okay, so we are going to send that to the XXL V30. Yep. Okay, great. So now we have 2 of the same cab.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
What we want to do, though, is probably switch those mics up. So one of them, start with a 57, right?
Okay,
that's
classic.
The standard. And then the other one, I think, was on a 409.
Correct.
Yeah, so you can leave that if you want. Or, like I like to blend it with a 121.
A 121, okay.
Because you get that low end. I know you don't have a ton of low end in your tones typically, but we can work with that, though. So just humor me.
Let's try the 121. I find I second guess myself with microphones. I'll go, oh man, that sounds pretty good. And then I'll think for a second, would anybody even think this sounds good? And then I say, okay, well, who am I to say this sounds? And I get into a whole thing. But in order to start here, we're starting from a place of 2 cabs, and we're blending 2 different microphones together at the command of Nick Hill, who knows what he's talking about. So I'm excited about this.
One other thing I would do, Dean, is just based on my experience, is that first cab with the 57, take the distance and go to like 5 inches. And I know that sounds like it's really far away, but the EQ kind of curve that comes from that, I find to be a little less harsh. Right. I find that to be a sweet spot. And we can tweak it. You have a cab. Now, when you strum your guitar, you won't hear a terrible, terrible sound.
That's very true. It's very frustrating when you put on an amp head and you're like, okay, cool. And it sounds like fizzy weirdness. Yeah. So at least we have a DI signal that's going through a simulated speaker cabinet.
All right. So we're done.
All right. See you later. Well, that was a great video.
Next step, right? You're going to want an amp, I would assume.
I think so. I think I would like an amp for this one.
No gypsy jazz here, so let's add an amp. I think when I set yours up, I used the Badunk, didn't I?
Okay, I got to stop. The Badunk amp, I had a change of heart because what I thought for years, like the Line 6 stock stuff, why would that be any good? This is what I thought. Well, we want to use a Mesa. You want to use a 5150. You want to use an Angle, whatever. And then I thought about it again after you built this tone for me and you used the Badunk. And I was like, of course the Line 6 stuff is going to be good.
Yeah. So I understand people's reservations because let's be honest, on the Bean and then the POD 500, the stock things didn't sound great. What I think that came down to was the impulses that were inside of those units. If you run some of those units, without a cab into an IR, I'm telling you, they sound good. So I kind of gravitate towards the Badunk. People who follow my channel, they know this. This is not a surprise. Right. I just feel like you get a fuller bass line right off the bat. That's easy, in my opinion. So
let's go for it. Okay, so now we built, in essence, one cabinet, blended microphones, and then an amp head. I'm going to play. I'm going to see what it sounds like.
Sure.
All right. I have a riff here that I'm going to use as our bass line. So this is going to be the riff I'm going to play through the entire video. And we're going to see how it kind of comes out as we build up. So here's the riff. Okay, that's our riff.
Immediately we're flubby, right?
We are a little flubby.
And I think for you, the gain might be a little high, right? The next thing I would do to tighten that up, first of all, is do the classic thing of adding some sort of tube screamer or an overdrive. They have in the distortion section right there, you can pull up the classic Scream 808, or they have the Horizon drive.
So which one is your go-to? Scream 808?
Yes, it is my go-to.
Let's do the classic and the tried and tested. The thing I do know about building tones is generally you want to bring the gain of the distortion pedal down to 0 because we don't want to add any more distortion. Is that correct?
Correct.
But we want to bring the tone up because we want the tightness of the drive pedal.
Yeah, so what I typically do, and you can save stuff to favorites and we can get into that later if you'd like. One of my favorites is a Scream 808. The gain is all the way down, the level is all the way up, and the tone is at like 7.
Okay.
Because I use the tone to kind of get that scrapiness. You know, the more tone in an overdrive pedal, you get sort of that punchy, scrapey, genty sound, for lack of a better term.
Well, that's what we're kind of looking for here too. We're looking for a death metal tone that's very tight, right?
All right.
Okay, so we're gonna bump that gain all the way down. We're gonna bump the tone, the level you said all the way up, okay, and then bump the
and this is where you can fiddle to taste. So
okay, well let's try it out.
Yeah.
Already feeling quite a bit better. Yeah, absolutely. It definitely tightened it up and it made it sound a little bit more like modern somehow. We're going to use a lot of dumb adjectives in this video, so it's like...
I mean, that's what guitar players do, right? We're good with dumb adjectives that don't actually mean anything, but they make you feel something.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Try bumping your tone up to see if you can get a little bit closer just with this block alone, right?
Okay, cool.
Go to like 8.
Okay, it feels pretty good. We're getting some noise, but we'll figure that in a second.
Oh yeah, let's fix that. So if you go up to where your blocks are to your very first block that looks like a guitar, it says multi. I always switch it to guitar because I have a guitar plugged in.
Very good.
Right, switch it to guitar. And you want to turn on your gate, your input gate. But I always bring my decay all the way down.
I oftentimes have multiple gates. I want the waveforms to be just big blocks of sound. Okay, cool. Let's try that. I'm going to hear this now with this noise gate on the input and playing that same riff. Let's check it out. I think it sounds pretty good. There's still some noise in there, but I definitely think it sounds a little bit better.
After that distortion pedal, we put another noise gate.
Okay.
So take your distortion pedal and move it. There you go. And right there,
we're going to throw it right there.
You can go to dynamics, and there will be another noise gate you can find.
Oh, just the regular noise gate.
Yeah, I prefer the noise. Just because I know it's just simpler. I mean, other ones probably work better, but I haven't put the time into like...
Have you put the time into a lot of these things? Like the amps, you've done a lot of comparison. The cabs, you've done a lot of comparisons.
Some more than others, for sure. Depending on like what I'm going for. If there's a part of a song that I'm working on and I want to get a particular sound, then I'll go like deep dive, like reference, like we were talking earlier. Where have I heard this type of sound before? What did they do? What did they use?
All right, so we're going to put the decay also all the way down, I guess. That's my...
Yeah, sure.
And then the threshold we'll just leave for now and we'll see what it sounds like. It's already sounding a lot tighter. There might be some threshold tweaking that I would want to change, but otherwise, yeah, pretty good so far.
Threshold is going to depend on how hard you're playing, what everything is plugged into. There was another important point I was about to make, but now it's completely gone. In the latter years that I've been working with this thing, I've just been keeping it super simple. Like what we have so far is something that I would use and just tweak with mic placement, distances, stuff like that.
Right.
And then, of course, we haven't even touched amp settings. Let's go to the amp and play with some stuff. For your rhythm tone, the drive might be at like a good value. For my stuff, tend to use the badunk at around 5 or 5.5. That might be too much for you.
Well, let's see what happens when we bump it up to 5.5.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is like when I start doing this stuff, I generally get lost before this point. Like you've already brought me to a point where it's like, it sounds pretty good actually. Like I'm pretty stoked on it.
So you're not alone, right? Like, what do you think it is if I wasn't here with you and you were just like, I'm going to make a patch and I'm going to do it and it's going to sound good?
Okay,
Where would you get tripped up?
I would get tripped up on the A being of amps and the A being of cabs. I would go, does this one sound better? Does this one sound better? I would start at a point that is more suited for later on in the process. the baseline that we have is from your experience of what sounds good. And in my brain, I'll second guess what sounds good. And I'm already A-Bing stuff before I even know if it feels good. And that's the most important part, is how the amp feels when you're playing through it. Because if it doesn't feel good, then I feel like you're have a way harder time making it sound good.
So album tones, right? There's not a lot of low end on the guitar tones on an album, especially your stuff, right? But if you just jam in a room to your album tone, people would be like, this sounds like crap.
Yes. Anything else that you would want to do to a tone like this before you get into some of the deep settings? And maybe if there are deep settings, what are one or two of the things that you might do?
I can't explain exactly what like sag bias and bias X are. I've looked it up. I've seen people's video explanations where they run the signal through all sorts of like actual audio meters and spectrometers. And I'm like, cool, it does a thing. We write different stuff, but I will bump the bias a little bit, tube bias, where it's basically making the tubes run a little bit hotter, a little bit more compression, a little bit of excitement. So,
I like excitement. Okay. Just a couple points.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
All right. Okay, cool. Is that going to make a really noticeable difference, or is it going to? Am I
Probably
gonna feel
not.
it?
It's going to be subtle, and it's about subtle little nuances adding up, culminating at the end for that enjoyable rhythm tone.
Okay. Quick question. Now, if I feel like my gate is a little bit loose, which one should I tighten first, or does it even matter?
That probably doesn't matter.
Yeah, you know what? It cuts off the tail of the riff just enough to make it sound mechanical. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not fighting against it, but it's making the endings more kind of clipped. Like, just clip the noise at the end. Another thing that I'm doing to sort of, and this is not tone related, at least not in the software here, but I have a string mute here, fret wrap past the nut on my guitar. Now, I saw a comment the other day, to which I politely corrected. Somebody said, well, of course he sounds good. He's got a fret wrap on his guitar. And I said, oh, no. Common misconception. It doesn't actually do anything for your playing. All it does is it mutes up some of those harmonics and the sympathetic kind of vibrations past the nut, especially when you have a guitar like this, as a big, long headstock, not bragging. And all these strings, they create noise past the nut. If you hit it really hard, you're going to get some of that translating through the strings into the pickups, and this just mutes it. So this tone feels very smooth and easy to play and fun, and the gate is nice and tight. So what we could do now is compare it to the tone that you built.
Save it first.
I'm gonna save. That's a good point. Okay, so this is the tone, and now there's a lot of stuff going on this one, but there's the difference here is that this is rhythm, lead, and clean, all running through the signal path here. So you've got a lot of things that go on and off as I go through. But we're just checking out the rhythm, and here's what it sounds like with that same riff. Feels quite good. One thing I can notice now is that the patch that you built for me before it seems quite a bit brighter.
Yep.
Brighter with less low end?
We have a couple EQ blocks at the end just for that polish, right? You don't need them because this is proof, and the proof isn't in the pudding right here, right? You have a really good sounding patch, I would say, that you would agree with. But if we want a little more polish, a couple little things, you don't have to go crazy with EQ, right? Because it'll just, again, there's that wormhole. And dude, Dean, we haven't even played with like mics or anything. Yeah, we can even, like, if you go to your cab block, if you move the distance of that 57 closer, it's going to change.
Let's do an A/B and check it out. Okay, so that's at 5 inches, and we move it to 2.5. It's got more low end, I think.
It might. And then again, if you want to go to the other cab, we have that ribbon mic, which you can roll off some lows if you want. You can swap a different mic. So another thing you can play with is that high cut, right? It adds a little bit of that bite, but there might be too much on this right now. Bring the high cut down a little bit more, like bring it down to 7, like 7K or something like that.
Okay. Definitely a lot. I feel like it's a lot darker now.
It got darker. It got almost too dark, right?
I think it's a bit too dark. Yeah. Let's bring that up. I wouldn't mind a bit more high on there. Yeah, there's definitely something really important right around there. The high end, and you just roll it off just a little bit, all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, where's my, like, the fluidity? Where's the smoothness? Where's like the liquidy sort of feel? with guitar, a good feeling amp is where you sort of feel like everything's smooth and flows. The notes flow into each other, and you're not trying to fight anything. It just kind of comes out. That's what we're looking for here. But it might sit in that high frequency there. If a viewer is watching this and they feel like they are stuck in this world, like I might be after we stop recording this video, do you have any suggestions for them?
Yeah, record it. Take a couple riffs, open up your DAW, record some stuff. Just get to the spot where you feel good about the riffs that you're playing.
Yeah.
It's inspiring enough, and then record it and see how it sounds, in context with guitars panned hard left, hard right. Maybe if you got some bass, you can record some bass. That's a very important thing. I mean, I know we're just making a jam along kind of a play riff, rhythm riff, but one thing that I've done before, and I think we did it in your other patch, I've added an EQ block, and there's a particular EQ block called a tilt EQ. So right behind the last block in your chain, you can go to EQ, and then there's tilt EQ.
Oh, I noticed this in the block that you built for me. I'd never seen it before.
Yeah, so basically what happens is if it's flat right now, but if you raise it up, what's happening, and I don't mean to insult anybody by explaining what the fuck a tilt EQ is, but
no, I didn't know. So I looked at it, I was like, oh, tilt, what the fuck is that? So please explain it to me.
So your center frequency is basically like a pivot point, right? If you're going up, the high end's going to go up, but simultaneously the low end is going to go down, and then vice versa. So what you get, the frequencies are still all there. You're not just notching stuff out. I'm going to lower this low end just a little bit and then boost my high end at a certain point a little bit. So a sweet spot, there's this guy, Jason, in the Line 6 community.
Shout out Jason. Kind
of introduced me to the idea of this tilt EQ. 750 hertz is like what I think I landed on. That might be what he landed on, but I also played with it. Okay. So what I'll put is like the center frequency. It's going to be your second. You're going to move that to like 750. At least that's what I used in your patch. So we'll just kind of, use that as a baseline.
Okay, I'm going to do something special. I'm doing 754 hertz. I hope that's okay.
Perfect. Now, what you're going to want to do is boost that a little bit. So that top thing where it says flat right now, like just go up, I don't know, maybe 10, maybe 5, maybe 10, and you're going to notice a difference.
Huge difference. It's like all the darkness that we had before, totally gone, and it's got that high end. It is a bit too
much, I think.
Obnoxious, but like I can tell that that's a great tool to shape the overall end product. If your tone is too dark, definitely, like that makes sense to me. And I had never heard about this before.
And another thing that I've done, we're getting in the territory of maybe adding too many blocks, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Keep it simple, stupid, but whatever. It's a game of inches when it comes to this. So we got the tone with the tilt EQ pretty tight. The high end's there, but it might be a little too harsh. What you can do is add another EQ block behind that. Because what we're going to do is we're going to just control that super high end fatiguing stuff. Okay. So we're going to go to parametric EQ this time. And that high cut, you're just going to turn it on. It's the second to the bottom.
Okay, I see.
There you go. There.
On. Okay.
So you would think that it's the high cut's at 20K. Sure. You're not going to notice anything. You will. There's something about the curve in the EQ block in that roll off that does something. Okay. So you can even A/B it. Like if you turn that block off and then turn it on, you're going to hear a difference.
And then with it on, it definitely feels different.
You're gonna hear it, especially in your headphones, right?
Yes.
Like I'm sure you're noticing it.
Definitely, like you're right, controlling that high end. Okay,
so
interesting.
Even maybe if you bring it down to like 19.5 or something, it might be audible for everyone to hear.
So that's what on. Now I'm starting to hear quite a bit.
You're smoothing it off a little bit, right? And then that's something you can bring in, maybe overdo it, and then you kind of roll it back a little bit till you get to the point where, okay, there's the high end I want, but it's not fatiguing, That's something you can do.
Cool. Okay, well, dude, I mean, I think that we've got something going on here. I think that I feel like I learned a lot about the Helix. I think that we built something kind of cool, and it was pretty painless, if I'm being honest.
It's not that hard.
And it's all about getting the feel and building it simple and not getting stuck in the options in the settings too long until you know, okay, this feels good. Like you mentioned, record, and hear what it sounds like inside of the product that you're going for, whether it's a mix or whether it's just recording demos at home for whatever, or if it's just jamming or, you know, whatever. Yeah, I mean, I hope that we cleared up some questions anybody had. Do you have anything else that you wanted to mention about the unit before we're done?
I sound like a typical 40-year-old something dude, but like if you read the manual, the amount of stuff that you learn, like everything that I've done on my YouTube channel, I just read the manual and play along with it while you're reading it to see what this stuff does.
Your YouTube channel is Nick Hill. It's just your name, right?
Nick Hill makes music.
Your band name is?
Yeah, it's called Detra Cortina. I have several different projects happening because I try to diversify, and, you know, depending on what kind of stuff I'm writing, I put it under a different name.
If you like what you saw here today, go over and subscribe to Nick Hill. He's a great dude, built awesome tones, and I've learned a whole bunch talking to him and watching his videos. So thanks very much for hanging out with me today, and
absolutely.
And maybe we'll do it again.
My pleasure. Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right, thank you so much.